calling me after a cold night like this.
Hand out some things for y'all. Just the four of you, you mean?
Vance? I didn't know. They took that, whose house is that right here? Rutgers. So this is what we're looking at. Bill uses that field, doesn't it?
No, that's Steve's. Or was Steve's.
Well, yeah.
He says, Bill uses that field, I says, no, that's Steve's field, but it was.
Yeah, I sold it
to
3 years ago
Yeah.
to Mario.
This is unrelated to the subdivision. This is a separate. This is something I was gonna pick your brains about.
They have 44 pages of print.
Yeah.
So they're not making it very long.
I have it as my house.
I'm keeping them all.
I'm just a habit.
Sir, are we done with the?
I wanna give Bonnie what I'm handing out here, but then I will be done, yes. If you wanna get started there.
Commission meeting called to order at 6:02. Stand for pledge of allegiance, please. With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so take a moment of silence. Do we take the roll call?
Commissioner Smith,
Yes, here.
Commissioner Hearn,
Here.
Commissioner Adams,
Yeah.
Commissioner Morrow,
Here.
Commissioner Dick.
Okay, now we need to look at the meetings from minutes from the last meeting and accept those. Questions or changes to the minutes of our June 22nd, so that's the last meeting we had,
Yes, it was.
not 23. Hasn't been that. Oh, wow. Long time.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from June 22 of 23.
Here a second?
Second.
Motion second and made and approved to seconded to accept the minutes from the June 22nd, 2023 meeting. I'll say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. public hearing for, do you know of Paradise subdivision, or is there anybody speak about that? Please come over here, please. Your name is, sir?
Oh, Mario Castellanos.
Okay, okay, yeah. Yeah, sorry.
So, if I'm, apologies, if I may, so typically when there's a hearing, there's an order where I will present the staff report, and then you open up the hearing for the representative of applicant or the applicant himself to speak, or anyone in favor. And then there's the opportunity for anyone that may be in opposition to the project to speak. And then there's deliberation by the planning commission, and during that, you can ask the questions that you may have as they come up during the presentation.
Go for it.
Good evening. My name is Byron Gums. I am the acting city planner. I work with the Yakima Valley Conference of Governments. I prepared the staff report that was in your agenda packet. It's a review of a proposed subdivision. The address, the location of the proposed subdivision is 775 High School Road. It's on the south side of High School Road, about 1,000 feet west of the intersection of High School Road and Golden Road. The property was recently annexed into the city limits. It has a future land use designation, a comprehensive plan designation of residential, and the zoning designation is R1 single family residential. The proposal is to turn it into 21 lots. I provided you with the large 11 by 17 sheet that shows the layout of the proposed subdivision. The lot sizes are ranging from about 6,400 feet to about 11,000 feet on the largest side. The developer is proposing to build a cul-de-sac, an internal roadway that would meet city standards. Mapton Water and Sewer would be serving the project. In order to do so, you'll be extending it about 1/4 mile down High School Road. And as part of the review, currently the city of Mapton within the subdivision regulations requires that all subdivisions have alleyways. And the way of lessening that standard is to go through what's called a variance procedure. So what they're requesting a reduction in that standard, and that was part of this review as well. As I mentioned, the comprehensive plan designation is urban residential. There are a couple of comprehensive goals and policies that this proposal falls underneath or is achieving. The first one is under the land use element, which is to provide a desirable place to live that will attract all persons of all income levels. The specific policy is policy 6.4, which reads, provide residential areas that offer a variety of housing densities, types, sizes, costs, and location to meet current and future demand. And then within the comprehensive plan's housing element, there were 2 goals and similarly 2 policies that applied. The first being to encourage a variety of safe, sanitary, affordable, and attractive housing options for all Mapton residents, with the implementing policy to support and encourage the construction of a variety of new housing units for all income levels, including moderate and lower income households and elderly market demand. Housing element goal 2 reads, residential areas that are safe, sanitary, and attractive places to live will be established and maintained. I apologize, that says Grandview, but it is Mapton's goal as well. With the implementing policy under objective 2.2 stating that the initial cost of providing municipal services to serve new residential developments will be borne by the developer. So this proposal does meet those goals and policies. The way that zoning works is that within the comprehensive plan, it's designated as residential and then it's implemented through different zoning districts. So for example, Mapton has R1 single family, it has multifamily residential, commercial zoning and so forth. And the way that this property was implemented in zoning district was the R1. And the R1 zoning district is established to provide for low and moderate density residential development in a setting free from noise, traffic, air pollution, and other hazards. A variety of housing types is encouraged. Non-residential uses should be non-intrusive to protect and preserve the neighborhood quality and property values. At the same time, a wide range of lifestyle choices is encouraged. The property is currently vacant. It's been used for agriculture, pasturing over the last few years. Surrounding lands are vacant or developed with residential. The Mapton School District owns the lands immediately to the west. I'm not sure what plans or timelines are for that school district. Jurisdiction and process. So when you have, there's two types of subdivisions. There's short subdivisions, and then it's called just a subdivision, but the term that's often used is a long subdivision or a long plat. This is considered a long plat with 21 lots. And the process for that is it requires 2 hearings, one of them in front of the planning commission here, and then there will be another one in front of city council. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to determine conformance with the proposal's conformance with the goals, policies, and objectives of the comprehensive plan, the provisions of the zoning ordinance for the city, the provisions of this title, which is the subdivision ordinance, is what this is pulled from, and then the RCWs and WACs, which are the state laws that relate to the subdivision process. Making sure that there's conformance with comprehensive water and sewer plans, and the city, and where appropriate, the county's 6-year road improvement program, and any other standards necessary to serve the public good. Large subdivisions such as this one are subject to SEPA. It's the Washington State Environmental Policy Act. SEPA is what you've probably heard it called before. SEPA requirements allow for potential impacts to the natural and built environments to be analyzed to see if there's any sort of impacts that are beyond the scope of any sort of local, state, or federal development regulations would address. In reviewing the development regulations locally and providing notice to state agencies and some federal agencies, no comments are received. There weren't any potential adverse impacts that wouldn't have been mitigated through local controls. So a determination of non-significance was issued for the project. Notice of application. Initially, when Mr. Castellanos submitted the application, he did not include the variance information to reduce the alleyway standards. So we requested some information from him to address those. And once we did receive those, there was notice that was sent out to neighbors within 300 feet of the property, as well as interested agencies such as the Department of Health, the Yakima Clean Air Agency, and as I mentioned, no comments were received. Section 7 of the staff report gives you a timeline of the steps that were taken. So the initial subdivision application was provided to the city back in November. The variance application was provided in January the 14th, with a determination of completeness on the 27th of January. And then the notice was mailed out and also in the Sunnyside Sun on February 4th. It's a 14-day comment period, so that ended Tuesday. And the SEPA was finalized today. The reason being, with subdivisions, there's a shortened review period. You have 90 days per city code from when an application is submitted to get it in front of city council. So we're kind of setting up the dominoes so we can move through this process as quickly as possible for Mr. Castellanos. The next section of the staff report goes into the development standards in the R1 single family zoning district. The minimum lot areas are 4,000 square feet. 2 and multifamily dwellings are allowed in the R1 zoning district. I believe the development is proposed to be detached single family dwellings, but the minimum lot size is essentially 4,000 square feet per unit. So for example, if there's a triplex, you would need a lot size of 12,000 square feet in order to build that. That being said, that standard will be reviewed at construction stage, but you can see on the preliminary plat that all of the minimum lot sizes are meeting that standard for single family dwelling units. Mapton also has minimum widths for the creation of lots. For single family dwellings, it's 50 feet. So you're going to have 50 feet of lot frontage along the roadway. It's going to be reviewed as part of the final plan, and then as Mr. Castellanos finalizes his design, we'll make sure that that's met, but the preliminary plat shows them meeting those standards. If there's going to be multifamily duplex or anything larger, the minimum lot width is 70 feet. Once again, I do not believe Mr. Castellanos plans to develop anything more than single family detached homes on the site. Minimum setbacks. This is your property line setbacks, setbacks from streets and so forth. Front yard setback, so the lot side that is facing the street, it's a 20-foot setback with a drip line of 15 feet. So if you have eaves, you can go over that 20-foot line. So if you have a 5-foot eave, for example, so that's what the drip line is if there was a rainstorm where that water would be hitting the ground, but the wall of the home itself or the structure would need to be 20 feet back. Rear setbacks are 15 feet. Similarly, there's a 5-foot allowance for a drip line, so drip lines can be 10 feet. Accessory buildings, detached garage, if you have old hickory storage shed or something like that, those are allowed to be within 5 feet of that rear property line, and that's for the drip line as well. If it's a corner lot, the setback would be 20 feet because you're looking at what that setback from the road would be. That's going to be 20 feet. So no matter if it's the driveway, you know, if your mailing address is Oak Street, but Maple Street's the side one and you're on that corner, you're going to have a setback of 20 feet from both sides. Side setback, so from interior, if you're in an interior lot, it's 5 feet with a drip line of 3 feet. And then corner, of course, is that setback of 15 feet, and then it says a drip line of 13 feet. Those will all be reviewed when building permits are applied for. There aren't any building envelopes shown on the preliminary plat. There's no need for that right now, but it's just to, inform and educate the planning commission as well as the applicant of what's going to be expected of him when he comes back to develop homes if the subdivision ends up being approved by planning commission and council. Maximum building height is 35 feet. Fences, hedges, and walls. 6 feet is the height limit of the fence in the side or the rear yards. Front yards have a fence height limit of 4 feet. That's something that will be reviewed when the sites are being developed to ensure compliance with your development regulations. Off-street parking requirements. Mapton code essentially requires 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling unit. That's something that would be reviewed to make sure there's enough room when the individual lots are being developed and building permits are being applied for. The next section is the subdivision design. It says each lot shall have direct access to streets and frontage on approved private streets or dedicated streets. All these lots are going to have direct frontage to the proposed street. I don't believe it has a name at this time. This says proposed road A, but all the lots will have frontage. And being dedicated, it means that that land will become the city of Mapton's right of way. Lots having frontage on 2 streets avoided where possible. The lots are not facing 2 streets, it's just a single north-south road in the development. Block design, there's a maximum length of 1,000 feet. Says the length, width, and shapes determined due consideration of building sites and so forth, but this development is not proposing any blocks, so that standard doesn't apply. Typical street sections, so the municipal code, the subdivision standards, they do have street cross sections provided in them, but those have been superseded by the City of Mapton developer standards, and that's where I got these dimensions here. So there's a right of way width requirement of 60 feet. The pavement width requirement is 20 feet of gutter lip to gutter lip, and then a curb of 1.5 feet tall on both sides, and sidewalk width of 5 feet on one side. And then it says utility corridor and buffer varies. There's another development center that addresses the utility easement width. But when the plat is being finalized, the city engineer will be working with the applicant to make sure that all of those developer standards are being met by the proposal. Street criteria, it speaks to grades, cul-de-sacs, offset intersection curves, alleys, and then street signs and traffic control. Most of those are being met. The cul-de-sac standard has a limit of 600 feet. I believe the preliminary plat shows 630 approximately. That's something that would easily be changed with the design of the final plat. It would show that it's meeting that standard. The minimum radius for the city standard is 50 feet. I believe the proposal shows a 60-foot radius, which exceeds that standard, so there aren't any issues with that. There aren't any offset intersections that are proposed. There aren't any curves. Alleyways, that's what Mr. Castellanos is seeking to not construct as part of the subdivision, and that's addressed in a later section of the staff report. Street signs and traffic control, that's something that the contracted city engineer would review to make sure that it's installed to meet all the appropriate standards. I would imagine all that's needed is a stop sign. There wouldn't be any traffic lights that would be needed for this development. Utility easements. The way that the code reads is that it shall be a minimum of 16 feet wide and centered on internal property lines or inside the external property lines of the original parcel. So I would imagine the intent of that being is where it would be 8-foot utility easements on either side of an internal property line. Typically with utility easements, it's enough where the companies or the city can get in there and have their equipment. So if you need a boom truck or if you need a backhoe or something to do some sort of work, that's what that easement width is intended to do. The preliminary plat shows that there's, I believe it's a 10-foot easement. That there were a couple of site plans that were shown. This one that I presented to the planning commission does show it's a 10-foot utility easement along the proposed roadway. That's something where if there's an agreement that's reached between the developer and the city engineer, if that's sufficient, that's something that can be addressed as part of the final plat. We would just want to make sure that that's part of the record. The subdivision ordinance, I believe a lot of it was written in the 80s and may not be completely relevant to how today's developments are built. So if there is a latest and greatest way of doing it, that's something where there is some flexibility between the developer and the city. see, water and sewer lines, the standard has them being required in the alleyways where it says it's not feasible or practical to do so. It can be located in the street. As I mentioned, alleyways aren't part of this. They're not proposed to be part of this, with water and sewer being in the roadway. And that has been deemed to be acceptable. Standards state that the city uses the Department of Ecology for sewer system development and DSHS standards for water system development. As I mentioned, that the city of Mempton has developer standards that provide for the installation and design and construction of water and sewer. This staff report conditions that those be installed according to those standards. And then the last criteria there is that new fire hydrants that we spaced at maximum intervals of 600 feet. And the staff report conditions that the applicant install hydrants to meet that standard. It's something that would be determined through consultation with the city engineer to make sure that everything is spaced and aligned as it should be. Stormwater drainage. It goes into detail on the engineering requirements. For example, planning for a 25-year storm. The gist of it is that the applicant is responsible for conferring with the City of Mempton consulting engineer, Grant Osborne, to make sure that their stormwater design meets all of the standards that are in place today. Section 11 speaks to the variance. States that let's see here, looks like 7 different criteria that need to be met for a variance and to be approved. The first one is that special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land involved and which are not applicable to other lands in the same area. The intent behind that is variances should be granted when it's a limitation due to the land itself rather than the wishes and the desires of that developer. And with the location of the property between the railroad right-of-way and the school district property, that there's really limited need for alleyways in this area. There really isn't any place where this development would continue where having alleyways makes sense. In addition, there have been some recent subdivisions that have been approved by the city which waive the requirement for the alleyways. So requiring alleyways for one individual where it's not required for another individual is something that isn't really good planning. It opens the city up to some risk with that. And as an aside, the city is going through a periodic update where we're going to be revising the development regulations. Starting this summer and this fall, you'll be seeing some of those in front of you, but that alleyway requirement is something that's going to be removed from the subdivision code. Second criteria is that the literal interpretation of the provision of the title would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same area under the terms of this title. The requirement of alleyways does not deprive rights commonly enjoyed by nearby properties. The next criteria is that special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. The applicant has not done anything that would necessitate the or require variance to be provided. So an example of that would be, say he had owned a large piece of land and subdivided it in such a way where he couldn't create alleyways. That would be the result of his own actions by the design of that. And that's not consideration for the request to reduce the alleyway standard. Special hardship is not self-inflicted. That's what I just mentioned. Let's see. The granting the variance requested will not confer the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this title to other lands in the same area. Does not, the reduction of that standard does not constitute special privilege. Financial gain cannot be grounds for the variance. That's basically that you get greater profit by not meeting the alleyways. And it's not really related to that. It's related to the layout and the design of the property and adjacent properties, as well as past decisions that have been made by the city. Then finally, the variance does not nullify the intent and purpose of the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, or this title, which is subdivision ordinance. And not requiring that the alleyways doesn't nullify any of those plans or ordinances. There's opportunity where there's a variance that is granted, there can be conditions placed in order to make sure that the purpose and intent of the zoning district and the subdivision ordinance are still in place. But with the proposal and everything, there weren't any conditions that were identified as being necessary for that. Then it goes on to speak to the processing procedure and reconsideration of the decision by city council. Processing procedure, we piggybacked it on the subdivision review, which is what it's supposed to do. And then planning commission makes a recommendation to city council, and city council is the final deciding body for this. And that last little section, reconsideration decision by city council, is just what would be the process if there is an aggrieved party that says that you shouldn't have allowed this variance to be approved. There's a process for it to go back to city and listen and consider that person's argument. The decision, the recommendation, in review of the subdivision standards and the variance criteria, recommend that the subdivision be approved with the list of conditions below. The way that subdivisions work, there's a preliminary plat and there's a final plat. The preliminary plat is a review of the standards, and essentially, if it is approved, gives the applicant 5 years to do all the necessary improvements in order to have the subdivision in place. And the final plat is the review process where the city would go and ensure that all of the conditions of approval, all of the development standards that are supposed to be in place have been built out. And when the final plat is approved is when one lot turns into 21 lots. So that the applicant has 5 years in order to do all the work necessary. So that'd be extending the water lines and the sewer lines in High School Road. That'd be building the new roadway. That would be sidewalks, power lines, so on and so forth, irrigation. So the conditions that have been identified, so the conditions of approval are that the development of the proposed subdivision conform to all the requirements of the Mapleton Municipal Code and developer guidelines. That all internal roadways shall be built to meet city standards. All lots are required to be served with public water, with applicable fees paid, easements provided, and lines installed. So that would be the meters in place, the connection fees paid, so on and so forth. Same thing with the sewer, fire hydrants being installed in accordance with the city standards. Utility easements shall go with meeting the requirements of the developer guidelines. Requires that all easements for sewer, water, electric, gas, telecommunications, irrigation, and other utilities be shown on the final plat. Those easements are reserved for and granted to all utilities and their respective successors and assigns. So that would be the power company gets bought out, so Pacific Power buys out Benton REA or vice versa or something like that. It's not just tied to that individual company, it's whomever owns and operates all of those facilities. a drainage plan. So this is the stormwater requirements, meeting the design and construction requirements is required to be submitted and approved by the city engineer prior to finalization of the plat. Plan and profile drawings of the streets, grading and water, sewer, storm drainage. If there's any sort of street trees, plantings and public rights of way, irrigation water systems, need to be prepared in accordance with those design and construction standards. Set of as-built drawings shall be provided to the city of Mapton upon completion of the improvements. All street signs and traffic controls shall be installed as required at the time of the final plat. All property taxes and special assessments shall be paid for the full year. And then the 13th condition here is a requirement of everything that needs to be shown on the final plat. So the boundaries for each lot, dedicated easements and rights of way, complete and accurate legal description needs to be shown on the face of the plat. Certificates or a separate written instrument containing the dedication of all lands to be conveyed to the public, which would be the city city street right of way, shall be signed and acknowledged before a notary public, as all parties having any ownership interest in the land. A written statement that the subdivision has been made with the free consent and in accordance with the desires of the owners. Signature from the city consulting engineer or other licensed engineer on behalf of the city. Signature of the mayor, witnessed by the city clerk treasurer, which evidences the approval of the final plat by city council. Signature of the planning agency chairman, so the chair of the planning commission. Certification by a registered land surveyor indicating the accuracy of the survey in the plat. Engineer or land surveyor check the accuracy of the plan, or survey for the city cannot be the same individual responsible or involved in the survey and design of the subdivision. That's so, like, for example, there's multiple surveying and engineering companies. HLA is one, Gray and Osborne. So if it's intended to be where Gray and Osborne couldn't be the engineer working for the applicant as well as the engineer working for the city approving their own plans. Signature of the county treasurer indicating payment of all taxes. Signature of the county assessor. Location and description of monuments. Title report prepared by a title company. Any additional information deemed necessary by the mayor or city administrator, and the surveyor's field notes. The final decision made by council can be appealed. It gets appealed to Superior Court. The appeal period is 21 days from the date of the decision. So that would be when city council would have a hearing to affirm the recommendation made by the planning commission. And when council, they'll sign an ordinance essentially approving or disproving or modifying the conditions of approval. And the date of that ordinance being effective, there's a 21-day window where an aggrieved party could appeal. So it's typically a requirement that they be a party of record. So it need to be either the applicant or someone who is placed into the record today through their statements or comments that have been made. And that concludes my staff report. Be happy to answer any questions you may have. If you do not have any, the next step would be any of those in favor. If the applicant or the representative or anyone in favor of the proposal can step forward and speak their mind. And then it would be those in opposition or against the proposal would be able to speak their mind.
Marla, do you have anything to add for us tonight?
Not really. So, do it. We're ready to work.
This no helping place. What my first thought of fire control to get to the rear of the properties. And that's not going to be accessible. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, they'd be accessible. There'd be hydrants that would be required. And
Well, that would be my second question. There is hydrants built into the system.
Yes, that will
Okay.
be a requirement. Yes,
And
sir.
who pays for them?
The developer will be.
Okay, this, water line and sewer line is gonna be in excess of 1,000 feet. Who pays for that?
The developer does.
Wow.
All of that. The road.
Yeah, Mr. Castellano would be the
Okay,
responsible party for installing all of those.
okay, on this map, it says it's parcels 24407 and 230806. I can't find on this map 230806.
You get it all.
Where,
Well, right here. The part of
The one right here,
right, and then I just had it. Right here.
so they show it right here, so it's talking about the tax parcel numbers. It's not, so what they're looking at is the 24407, which is this one. This number here is the tax parcel number, this is the parcel on the second part.
so if I may, no, so it's an individual,
Yeah,
so
this one.
24407.
He was
So-
asking about the first numbers.
So,
Yeah.
so the way that the county puts their parcel numbers into place, so it's township, range, and section. So that's what those first six numbers are. It's, I believe it's range, township, and then the section. So those first six numbers are gonna be the same everywhere in this section of land. So it's,
Okay.
so it's like, be like, I don't even know, like township 23 north, range 8 east,
Okay.
section 6.
Okay.
For Mapton specifically for that, correct?
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter if it's in Mapton or outside of city limits. It's just township, range, and section.
Okay, my next question is this gonna be a dual water system? One from the city water plus the irrigation?
I don't know if the city has irrigation that they would be able to provide this if they're
SBID,
SBID.
yes.
So, each city's unique. I'm not that familiar with how Mapton runs it. So for example.
Well, I think this property already has irrigation
Oh, okay.
supplied
So
to it,
it would be separate then.
but,
Okay,
but I'm not sure. Because the city water, city of Mapton, as it exists right now, does not have irrigation.
okay, I understand. Okay. I was not aware of that. My understanding, so where I've seen developments like this in other cities, essentially so for example, city of Grandview, when there's a subdivision like this within the city and it's going from agricultural lands into residential lands, SBID provides the water, but the water system is managed by the city of Grandview Irrigation District. So that's what I was thinking may be the case here. It sounds like that is not the case, and that can be corrected and reflected.
Well, what I was thinking of is that, sometimes we have a situation with low water in Mount. And if there was a dual system, they could do their lawn and stuff with irrigation and the housing could be city water.
So if,
But that's okay.
well, if you'd like, so with the authority that the planning commission has is they can modify the staff report and they can recommend approval with the addition of a condition that states that all all landscaping shall be watered through irrigation rather than municipal water.
Well, I'm not sure if how would that be split up? The individual property owners would pay an irrigation fee.
I'm not sure if there would be some sort of a HOA or something like that that would be needed to be in place in order to ensure that. Yep.
SBID is explained to me because I farm all three parcels, including the high school. And I have weir boxes and irrigation water in all of it. But since day one of this proposal, when it happens, SBID, the developer in conjunction with SBID has to provide for irrigation water for the individual lots. And we have to, this upcoming irrigation year, reconstruct the system in our weir boxes to accommodate that. So SDID will in fact provide irrigation water for that development, the same as they did at the one that's on, I don't know the name of it, Advance across the street. They did that as well.
Okay, so, we can add a condition to the staff report saying that the applicant shall coordinate with SBID in providing irrigation to the individual lots.
That's required on this already.
Oh, okay.
Now, one other thing that concerns me is the relatively level land and the water, the sewer flow to the sewer plant. Is there gonna be an additional pump involved in this, or?
That's something that would be determined through Gray and Osborne. I know it was part of the conversation. My recollection, which may not be perfect, is that there is enough gravity flow at this location where they don't need to add a pump to it. One of the things is, not part of this, is that we did have a conversation about if development continues in this side of town, there are opportunities to oversize the water and the sewer lines to accommodate future growth. And he said with that, there would be larger issues with, for example, the water getting stagnant in the line and needing to have outflow device and additional pumps and things like that. And I believe where it was landed is that oversizing was not necessary and no additional pump would be necessary at this time. That being said, when the final designs are being made, they will be working with Gray and Osborne to make sure that if a pump is necessary, that it is installed. And that is a cost that would be borne by the
The concern was brought up to me this morning about road width. And the person suggested I drive through the Catholic thing. There's places there that you can't get two cars through. And they can't get fire engines through. So is the road gonna be wide enough that they park a car on each side, that you'll have a two-way path? Two-way traffic possible through there? Because I know, I drove over there today and it was enough for one car, not for two cars.
So the way that the city road standards are written is that it's only a 20-foot width that's required. That being said, if the developer is going to work with the city and have it, so I believe 26 feet is typically what's being seen, especially, it depends if there's parking on the street. I believe city mapping code states that there isn't supposed to be any on-street parking.
Oh, well.
But yeah.
I beg your pardon.
But that's what it reads, right? So the way that the road standards are written is with the understanding that there wouldn't be on-street parking.
Well, there will be on-street parking there, guaranteed.
Although these lots are pretty big,
They are, they're good size.
and there's not gonna be sidewalks, I assume.
The requirement is sidewalk
Says one side.
on one side. With the cul-de-sac, that's something that in consultation between the developer and the city and the city engineer, there may be a waiving of that requirement, or it could be placed. But the way that the standards are written right now is that there is a requirement for a sidewalk on one side of the street.
So there were concerns about safety of children
Yes,
because of the irrigation, and I don't know where the irrigation pond is out there, but somewhere out there is in the other property. Yeah, but to make sure the kids don't get where they're not supposed to be. They're gonna require fencing on this, for each corner, or is
fencing,
Mario gonna fence, or
that would be,
that's optional?
that's optional, it's up to the developer. The code does not require fencing to be installed.
I don't see any need for alleys because each plot has a frontage, a road frontage,
Yes.
so. And, I'm sure there'd be some kind of driveway or something in each one where the fire truck could get to the back easy enough.
You'd actually make it worse, because if you did insist on the alleys, there'd be 3 road approaches off of high school roads in a couple hundred feet rather than one.
Yes,
Doesn't make any sense in this
No.
particular design.
it does not make sense to have, alley.
Yeah, no alley, more parked cars.
No sense for all.
This is where the current pond is.
Okay.
That's on this.
Let's see, that's.
This is high school property, and this is all.
This right here is what.
Yep.
Yeah, this is what, right here.
Correct.
Is that what I'm supposed to?
This is underground going here.
Yeah. Any further comments? Anybody? I don't know, the gentleman back there,
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
you have something that you need to add to tonight?
Let's find some new housing for folks here in Snapper.
Anybody have any particular questions for us?
We do this, how long before we see houses?
Only within first 6 months, we've been waiting for a couple of years.
Yes.
So we've got investors, we've got our real estate agents, we got everything's ready to go. All we need is the approvals. And,
So as fast as they get the roads and.
So the way that the process will work is that there will be a recommendation made by the planning commission. That recommendation will go to city council for a hearing. City council, if they approve it, it's the approval of the preliminary plat, which starts the 5-year clock for improvements to be done. So it's really a matter of how quickly engineering can be done that meets all the standards in construction on the roadway and so forth to start.
Any questions? Do I hear a motion to accept this,
I make a motion, we accept this.
motion made and accepted that, we approve this, development? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Any other business this evening?
I did, want to discuss the other list that I provided to planning commission members. Yes, so this is unrelated to this.
thank you.
Those is one of the efforts that YB-COG is leading for the city of Mountain is we're preparing the periodic update, which we're updating the comprehensive plan and your development regulations, zoning, subdivision, and critical areas. But there was a state law passed a couple, 3 years ago that requires the creation of a climate element for each city. And it's something that the city isn't, that there isn't a penny that's coming out of your coffers. The State Department of Commerce is fully funding this. And as part of the process, the idea behind it is, it's climate change and resiliency. So it's really more about resiliency. It's how we're going to respond if there's a wildfire nearby, how we can prevent impacts from wildfires or poor air quality due to smoke or being socked in or anything like that. And one of the steps is identifying the city of Mapton's community assets. And that's what's on this page. They're broken out into the different sectors, and the assets that are listed there, worked with my staff, and we kind of brainstormed some ideas of what community assets could be. And I really would just like to go through these with you, and we can strike out the ones that don't apply to Mountain, or we can add ones that aren't addressed. And what happens with these community assets is when we're looking at how the weather's changing, how that changing weather would impact these different community assets, right? So an example of that may be, grocery stores. So with grocery stores, you don't have a grocery store per se, but you have Horizon Market, right? And
It's a grocery store.
I thought it was just like a convenience market.
Have one here on East Street.
Oh, perfect. So, so if there's, during wildfire, now they're cutting power, right? So if there's a wildfire in the area where power gets cut, how's the grocery store? Are they gonna have backup generators? How are they gonna make sure their freezers are running and coolers and so on and so forth? So that's the sort of thing that we're going to be looking at, is looking at all of these different assets and how the different things may impact it. So whether it's extreme temperatures, whether it's wildfire, whether it's flooding, whether it's a drought, all of those things. So, I would just like to go through these.
I have a
And-
question before you get started, if I
Sure.
might. Is the state insisting on this new element, or are they proposing it?
It's a requirement. It's mandated.
You've got, kids.
So if
And how
you,
many new jobs does this create?
um,
I'm sorry, that's a facetious question. but-
yeah, well, so, yeah, it's paid for out of the Climate Commitment
Climate
Act.
change, we're gonna go through a whole element, several weeks of discussion on stuff that doesn't apply to us, kind of like the wetlands and the rest of it.
So,
Okay, I got it.
so some things will apply, some things won't.
Something to do.
The way that it works is, we identify, so there's these sectors of the climate element. And we need to have goals and policies for each one of these. And, it's really city council's decision on what they want to adopt with it. But they'll have the choice of saying that, the risk from certain types of climate change aren't impacting Mapton and nothing needs to be done.
We know in fact there is climate change involved in that.
I would say you are seeing the impacts of things like changing precipitation patterns. So they're seeing less snowpack in the mountains. So it's coming as more rainfall, which means that you're seeing curtailment of junior water rights because there's drought conditions and things like that. So I think that while there may not be like sea level rise, there are changing weather patterns. There are things, whether or not it's climate change or just weather variation, there are things that are going to impact the citizens of Mapton. And the idea behind the climate element is finding ways to be proactive. So an example of that may be, we're breaking records with hot temperatures. And there may be ways where we can try and find ways to create, I don't know, shading for people have windows on the south side of their home, or thermal curtains or something like that, so they don't have to deal with hot temperatures inside their home. Or in the downtown area, making sure that there are shade structures, so if somebody's going between businesses, they want to sit on a bench, it's not directly in the sunlight. Things like that. But summarize, it is something that the city has to do. If the city does not do it, they aren't able to access state funds. So it's the stick rather than the
That
carrot.
would be the question. So it affects money that we can receive or not receive.
Yeah, anything, and I'm not sure the full extent of what can be curtailed, but it's funds that come through the state. So it's a new requirement of the Growth Management Act. So it'd be like having no zoning ordinance or having no subdivision ordinance, no comp plan. It's a required part of your comp plan.
Maybe I'm missing somewhere. Are we going to discuss every one of these points?
So we don't have to. It's just a list of things that broadly, and speaking with my staff, because we're doing this for 9 different cities. in towns here in the valley. And we tried to cast a wide net, so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel for every city. So we're going to each of the cities and asking planning commission, city council, what they feel the community assets are, because these are the things that we're going to be looking at when we're writing the climate element.
Let's
So
go through this and see which ones we can mark off.
I think number 4 on that natural gas, we don't have
No,
access to that.
Nope.
Do we have, fruited storage, cold storage in Mapton anywhere? Things?
And it's something where it could be what is here currently or what may be here in the future.
That'd be my question.
Yeah, because you're,
Hypothetical.
Maybe this element need to be approved of or finalized or whatever by the
So-
planning commission.
so it'll be aligned with the periodic update, so June of next year.
Okay, so June of next year is when this has to be completed. We wouldn't necessarily have to take action on this tonight.
No, this is just me asking
Okay,
the,
well,
the,
my
the,
opinion is, or my request is, because of the lateness of the hour, and a lot of us have other things to do, it would be better if we didn't have to go through this whole list again, if it's gonna be redundant, and we're gonna do it all again in a few months.
so this list, there's nothing saying the planning commission has to do anything with it. I'm going to be in front of city council on Tuesday asking their opinion on this as
I'm
well.
only concerned about the time.
And that's fair, and I wanna respect your time. This is just something where if planning commission wants to look at this right now, perfect. If it's something you wanna
Give us
take,
a little more time to go through it.
if you wanna take it home and strike through things and get it to Marty, and she can scan it and send it to me, that works just as well for me. So it's just, the more eyes that are on it, the better product that we have. And that's the sole reason I have it in front of
You know,
me.
I can do a better job of it if I have more time.
Medical facilities, we don't have one here, but we're in close proximity. to medical facilities.
We will have.
And it's something, so it's specific to city. So if it's something that's in Sunnyside or Grandview, wouldn't necessarily apply. But if it's something where there may be, like a emergency clinic or something that may.
Well,
open
the
up.
fire department has EMT system.
Yeah, so the periodic update, the comp plan is a 10-year window. So we have to be thinking of things that may be in the city in the next 10 years. And that's not, I mean, and it's good to be prudent with things. It's not like, you know, it's probably not gonna have a full-blown memorial hospital, but might have an emergency clinic or a helping out clinic sort of a thing. May not have, you know, well, you've got communication towers, but power generation. You know, that's pretty generic, distribution, power lines, transmission. So we can go through, and if it's something where you just wanna strike through, and I'll just compile that and see what ends up on the list. Cause it's not being finalized yet. That won't be probably until next month or so.
For sure, natural gas is off on this.
But yeah, there's no requirement for tonight. I just saw the opportunity to be here. Two birds, one stone.
Any additional questions or concerns? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting then, please. I make a motion that we adjourn. Motion made to be adjourned for a second.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye. Meeting adjourned at 7:03.